40 long weeks ago, the season set off in Daytona. Since then, we've seen 35 races, 2 champions, and a whole lot of fun. But it's time to wind down. After tonight, we're all going to go into hibernation for a few months until it's February time in Daytona next spring. Going into last week's race at Martinsville, the championship was firmly within the grasp of Thomas George, with Michael Krobach in a distant third. But after all the drop weeks and the Drew Carroll Clean Racing Award bonus points were added, it's now Krobach who's in first place by 9 points over Thomas George and another 9 points over one Brian Yazik. He's the furthest back of our 3 championship runners. Earlier this year in the Spring Phoenix race, Scott Eckridge won, and talking to the field tonight, he's still the odds-on favorite. Join us for the final round of the PGRL season. The MC² editing services leading the way to 50K from Phoenix Raceway. I'm Austin Belke, joined in the booth by Kenny Kibbe with our director Ryan Seneker in the production trailer. As you can see, we're here at Phoenix International Raceway. Kenny, what can you tell us about this place?
Yeah, Austin, well, Phoenix Raceway is a pretty odd racetrack, really. It's opened in 1988, or actually on the NASCAR Cup schedule in 1988. Sorry about that. But it's a 1 mile, relatively flat circuit, and it's been reconfigured a couple different times. Once in 2011, where they added the paved dog leg that was always there, but it used to be grass, and once it became paved, it became a very high talking point as far as passing. It's an opportunity to go down there and shortcut that dog leg. You don't have to necessarily follow what the track map says. But then it got reconfigured again in 2019 so that the backstretch turned into what is now the front stretch. So now restarts happen on this dogleg front stretch and really open up some of the wildest restarts that we see on the NASCAR circuit. But again, going back to the flatness of this racetrack, about 10 degrees or less of banking in the corners, and really becomes a game of patience in the corners. You can make the high or the low line work, but regardless, passing is relatively difficult here. As we took a look there at our weather, 94 degree track temp, 79 degree air temp, relatively warm tonight, and this track does change quite a bit when there's cloud cover, when there's not, and when the track temp heats up, cars really start to slide around here at Phoenix. You'll see you'll see quite a bit of shifting potentially here as well if you try to get extra drive off of the corners here with these next gen cars, 5-speed gearboxes now, which has really changed the game. But this is quite the track to end a long season at. It's a different track, and it gives you that short track feel, but some other elements that you don't necessarily see at other short tracks.
Thanks, Kenny. Real quickly, I want to go through the 3 drivers that are currently still in it to win it for the championship. The first of which is Michael Krobach in the 72 machine. MC² Editing Services is actually his proud sponsor. You can see all the point standings on your screen. So there's 9 points from Krobach back to Thomas George, and then another 9 points from George back to Yazik. So Yazik's got 18 points to make up just in tonight, but there's a lot of ways he can do that, Kenny. If he wins the race, he gets 6 more points over second place just by winning. It's 1 point per spot. There's 3 points for leading the most laps, 1 point for leading a single lap, and 3 points for being the hard charger. And all of our guys right now still in that championship hunt could be starting near the back of the field. So they do have a lot to play for in terms of the overall championship. And running down just who's in it, Brian Yazik went on a super hot streak. He won the last 2 races of last season back-to-back, went on to win a couple races in the earlier going of this season, and he was pretty much the point leader until about the 7th or 8th weekend, and then it was Thomas George. The 2 flip-flopped. George started to increase his lead further and further, and all that time Michael Krobach was just sort of waiting in the weeds in third. So it's very interesting to see how the entire dynamic, as we'll call it, has flipped going into this final race here at Phoenix. But without further ado, Isaiah Dupre is going to sit on pole for tonight's affair. Jonathan Cogswell starts to his outside in second position. John Wilco in the 62 is going to line up in third with Rich Jetty lining up to his outside. Woody Mahan is going to line up in 5th, followed by Mike Rasmus in 6th. Thomas George lines up in 7th with Brian Yazik in 8th. Greg O'Berry lines up in 9th, followed by Adam Jersky in 10th. Michael Krobach starts out in 11th position, followed by Cody Dempster in 12th. Chance Manning lines up in 13th with Jordan Harnish in 14th. Kenny?
15th goes to Pete Baskins. 16th is Grant Brown. Django Matthews is in 17th. Tim Weinkoff is 18th. Kyle Brooks is in 19th. And rounding out the top 20 is a newcomer, Pedro Henrique. And then 21st is Scott Eckrich, our first season champion. And our second season champion's back this week. Jeff Ward starts 22nd.
As always, we'll say right now, the PGRL starting field for every race is set by an inversion of the finishing positions from the last one. After that is all the people that are racing this week who weren't here last week, and then rounding out the field, the last two seasons champions, that being Scott Eckrich and then Jeff Ward. Kenny, the iRacing pace car begins to lead the drivers out onto the track as I Dupre, of course, winning the Mayhan Speed Laboratories You Finished Last pole award. Hopefully he can stay up there all night for his sake. Usually we like to interview the driver that sits on pole, but Zai wasn't in the Discord for tonight, so still got a lot to play for, though. Hopefully we can talk to him before the end of the night.
And this is one of the unique elements of Phoenix Raceway. You see how early that Isaiah gains control of the field. Some drivers in iRacing will take advantage of this and fire off super early. It looks like Isaiah's going to be authentic with it here and wrap around turn 3 and 4 before he fires off. But there he goes. He does fire off relatively early, and we're green.
Green flag flies to the air for the MC Squared Editing Services, leading the way 250K here at Phoenix Raceway. Look at all these guys going down in the dogleg. Sometimes you'll see them get down to 3 or 4 wide, but Kenny, we've already got our first caution of the night.
And it looks like it's Chance Manning with a spin. And looks like he just spun all by himself. And, well, it looks like he actually got a little bit loose coming up through the gears, and then it got magnified as he went down to the dogleg transition. This was actually going to be one of my keys tonight, was using this dogleg is going to be essential, but it's also a little bit tricky. Drivers have been telling us that the cars are pretty sensitive. When you hit that transition, can very easily get loose and self-spin, and it looks like that's exactly what happened to Chance.
Thanks, Kenny. So unfortunately here, lap 1, caution 1. You see the drivers now coming around to complete lap 2. You see a plethora of drivers here at the front of the field in front of our leader, Isaiah Dupre. The first of which is Rich Chetty. He started off in the pit road, as did John Wilco. Wilco and Rich Chetty are going to just loop around to the tail end of the field as soon as they get the wave around from the pace car. They'll do that with 1 lap to go before we go back to green flag racing. And then Chance Manning, obviously the driver that spun out, so he'll be able to circle around and just end up following Rich Chetty. He should at least. We'll have to see what happens, but both those drivers should get the wave around here in a couple laps. But Kenny, why don't you go ahead and talk us through the race and talk about those always important tires here at Phoenix.
Yeah, so tonight it's a 156 lap event, relatively short, one of the shorter events on the schedule. 7 total sets of tires, counting the ones you start on. 75% fuel limit, so about a 65 lap fuel run. So at least 2 pit stops based on fuel, but you could see more than that based on tire wear, which tire wear is a decent consideration here around Phoenix. You'll see drivers really struggle with drive off, trying to make passes with how difficult it is to pass here. Track position is going to be key. But going to my keys to the race, cut the dogleg safely. When we just saw that with Chance Manning, he did not cut the dogleg safely. Got the car upset a little bit on the restart and spun himself out. So that's one thing to really watch out for, because the dogleg is an asset and can help you make passes when used properly. And then again, keep the tires underneath you. A lot of tire fall off, up to possibly 2 seconds per lap when we get down to the end of a fuel run. So really need to keep the tires underneath you. I feel like you're going to really need those front tires to get the cars to turn around the corner, but the rear tires are what's going to really burn off when you're trying to get back on the throttle and get the drive off the corner, especially if you're trying to make a pass on somebody. So tire wear is definitely going to be a talking point all night long.
The field continues to ride around behind the iRacing pace car. Director, producer Ryan, if we could look at the point standings one more time, there's still a whole lot of positions left to play for before the end of the night. Obviously, you know, with the factor of every single race now counting for these guys, of course, there's 12 races in the season, and only 8 or 9 of those are going to count for the whole thing. So I think it's 11 in total, only 9 count with the 2 drop weeks. So basically, the points right now are pretty much how they run in the race are not running right now, but how they were going into tonight's affair. So everything from here on out is just straight points. You can see there's no more, Drew Carroll Safe Driver Award to factor in, no more drop weeks to factor in. It's just straight points for the end of the night. So you can still see, 8 points separating first, second, third, then Scott Eckridge. He's back in a distant fourth position. Unfortunately, the two previous champions, as well as lining up at the back of the field for the entire season, they don't get to collect any bonus points. So that's why he's so far down there. He does have a whole lot of wins, one of the most consistent drivers. But anyways, Kenny, looks like Mr. Consistency is in the lead. For whatever reason, Isaiah Dupre decided to come down pit road underneath the last caution.
Yeah, it's interesting that he would do that, but we've seen him pull that kind of conservative strategy. But here we go. Mike Razimus has already set the field off here.
Yeah, boy, he got a flying
another
start
whack.
there. Oh, yep.
This time it's Greg O'Berry with a spin, and he did not touch the apron, but he did self-spin once again, right off the hop here on the green flag. Didn't hit anything. As we take a look at the replay, I think he was kind of pushing up a little bit wider than what he wanted on the exit of turn 4, and maybe was really hacking at the wheel trying to get that car to turn back down, but stay on the throttle. And the combination of the wheel input plus the throttle input just kind of whipped him around.
Well, Kenny, we always talk about this every week, and the drivers were especially talkative about it here tonight, is that the tires, when cold, have almost no grip compared to when they're up to, fully up to the optimal temperature and pressure. So there's a lot less grip that you're working with as soon as you're coming off these cautions. So it's extremely, I'm not going to say lucrative to get everything you can out of the car, because at that point, you're kind of deep in the field. But certainly if you can get on it and get that car just right towards the edge of grip as soon as the caution, the green flag flies, the caution goes away, you could probably gain at least 2 or 3 spots.
Yeah, I mean, restarts are huge here at Phoenix with how difficult it is to pass under normal circumstances. You really need to take advantage when you have fresh tires, when you have a recent restart. But, I mean, man, we got to first get down into turn 1 and then focus on getting the passes made. But, yeah, I mean, drivers are just aggressive right from the get-go, and O'Berry is a relatively aggressive driver in general. And some of that might have kind of played into why he might have spun out right there. But luckily for him, he does lose all of his track position, but he at least keeps a clean race car and can continue on here. Looks like actually some drivers coming down pit road.
Yeah, very interesting to kind of hear what sort of strategy is being played. It's a lot of drivers. Scott Eckridge, the first among them. He's one of the favorites to win here tonight at Phoenix Raceway. It'd be a season sweep for him at the races here at Phoenix. To see a bunch of drivers coming down behind him. You got the 17 car, Gael Brooks. Got Isaiah Dupre down there too. And it's a lot of guys, even Jago Matthews.
Yeah, this is an interesting call. Now, to make every set of tires kind of be evenly used with a 156 lap race, you'd need to go about 22-23 laps per set of tires, and we really haven't run anything green flag, but some of these drivers might come down for just topping off on fuel, not really caring much about the track position, especially the drivers that are already in the back. Might as well come down, grab some extra fuel, and that might help you out on strategy later on.
Lights still on. It looks like atop the iRacing pace car, the field is starting to get closer and closer to doubling up. So we should be getting a 1 to go signal this time by the front stretch here. As soon as they cross the stripe, we should see the lights atop the iRacing pace car go out. That, of course, signals 1 lap to go before we go back to green flag racing. 2 cautions so far in the 9 laps we've run. And Kenny, as soon as you go to green flag racing, there's so many ways to get around this track. I honestly, I'm thinking we're going to see some cautions as we go into the night, just based on how these guys get around here, because there's so many different ways to go around this track and so many differing agendas, because basically for every strip of concrete or asphalt you see on the track, that's basically one groove of racing in turns 1 and 2, and even 3 and 4. There's a lot of different ways to go about running this place. Yeah,
so I mean the restarts here are very susceptible to having accidents and cautions because of the fact that there are so many grooves down the front stretch through the dog leg, and then it kind of funnels down into turn 1 and 2. But like you said, there's also a lot of options as to where to run through the corners here, especially in 1 and 2. You can make the high line, middle line, bottom line, any of them work. And because of that, you see drivers with a lot of different agendas trying to make the corners work in different ways, and sometimes lead to it coming together. But here we go, we're green once again.
Mike Rasmus put his foot on the loud pedal extremely early compared to what we've seen so far. The drivers round out through turns 3 and 4 to take the start-finish line. Go ahead and start lap 11 here. This is what I'm talking about. Let's look at all those drivers, Kenny. Almost 3 wide going down into turns 1 and 2, and this corner is extremely wide. One of the longest. You need a lot of patience digging around here.
Yeah, you really do, and you can really tell who's got it figured out here on the. Once we get to a long run, you'll see drivers here have a lot of middle corner speed. That is what wins the race here at Phoenix. Whoever can carry the most speed in the middle of the corner as the tires start to wear out, that's the driver you're going to watch out for, because that is the driver that's going to be able to start and initiate passes coming out of these corners.
And Kenny, talk me and the viewers at home through how in the world you save tires around this place, because honestly, if you want to go as fast as possible, you're just going to turn the wheel more. You may be turning the wheel less. Are you braking more before you enter the corner, or are you just choosing to maybe, choose the bottom lane, maybe go in and do like sort of a switchback or a cut, enter high and cut back down low? How do you save tires around Phoenix?
Well, there's a few different ways to do it. I mean, first thing, the easiest thing really to do is to let off early off the throttle before you enter the corners. And you can really roll into these corners and actually not lose that much lap time. So avoid just stabbing on the brakes, and then watch what your steering input is. Don't be hacking at the wheel, like really pulling the wheel really quickly. Don't turn the wheel too much. Only turn it the amount that you need, and that's it. And just going after clean air too. If you really try to stuff up behind somebody, you can really get in their dirty air and build up a push pretty quickly. As we see look at a replay here, another driver losing it to the inside. That was not a cause for caution, but wall contact nonetheless. That's John Wilco.
Yeah, John Wilco went for a spin off the racetrack onto the apron. The reason it wasn't a caution, unlike the earlier wrecks, he basically just stayed off the racing surface. You can see the apron is a flat part of the track, and that yellow line is basically where the iRacing counts the racetrack as. Anything below that is off track. If there's a caution down there, a car stopped, we don't care. The show must go on, and it continues to. Right now on lap 15 out of 156, Thomas George is your leader. He just got past Mike Rasmus for the overall lead. Then there's Woody Mahan, Brian Yazik, Adam Jerski round out the top 5. So far, the furthest driver back in terms of the championship guys, Michael Krobach in 8th position. And if Thomas George wins this race right now, he'll currently be earning the championship. It's very hard if you're going to try and win the race without winning, or win the championship without winning the race, or at least beating all your competitors out there on the track, because it's just such a large margin just by winning the race over the guy, even in 2nd position.
Yeah, and Thomas is checking off a few boxes here. First he's
leading a lap.
Yeah, leading a lap gains bonus points that way, and he's leading multiple laps. So if he's able to lead the most laps today, that'll be another bonus for him. And he's just focusing on track position. And I think that's a really smart strategy. Get up to that front and try to control the race. And I think that'll help Thomas. I think he does really well when he can control these races. He's pretty good at defending his position. So I think he's going to be best if he can remain out front and play that strategy as long as he can. Whereas a driver like Michael Krobach, we see him kind of wait in behind and kind of not develop until later on in the race. And that seems to be kind of his style, and then kind of show up at the end. And that's maybe the way that we will see Michael Krobach have success, is if he just kind of shows up and slowly makes his way up towards the front by the end.
Yeah, it's not very often that we see Michael Krobach leading all race long, but boy, when he does, he is just dominant. One of the fastest cars all race long. My mind goes back to Texas. He was just the dominant car for pretty much the entire race, and at the end, I think it was Thomas George that came away with the win with an absolute, it was like 4 or 5 wide for the lead before the end of the race at Texas. That was just crazy. So we've had a lot of different close races all throughout the season. Scott Eckrich, more often than not, has been the spoiler for some drivers, though, as you see one car spinning out down the back straightaway just near the dog leg. See if I can't sort of catch a beat on that car. Looks like it was the 17 of Kyle Brooks.
I'm not sure. I haven't been able to pick up
Tim
anything.
Weinkoff.
And I do know Tim Weinkoff has been off the pace, 15 laps down. He's been on and off the pit road.
Weinkoff. Just watched his lap here a second ago.
But regardless,
Really hard to say.
regardless, we stay green, and it's actually the field has been relatively kind of spacing out. There's kind of a few lines of cars, not many side-by-side battles. The leader's pretty much got a train of cars all the way back to about 7th place, right behind him, but not far back is 8th and 9th and 10th in Eckrich. You see there's a side-by-side battle between Harnish and Jeff Ward already trying to make his way through the field.
Yeah, you can see our two previous champions, Jeff Ward and Scott Eckrich, in that order in terms of, not chronological, but back through time. Scott Eckrich won the Season 1 championship. Jeff Ward won the Season 2 championship. You can see Jeff, this is an onboard camera from him, basically right over his shoulder, looking out the front windshield. He's trying to see if he can get around the 22 car here, Jordan Harnish, and his Patriot Media and Marketing scheme. Jeff currently choosing to run on the high line. It looks like he's going to draw a beat up to his outside. They're going to be even here down the backstretch.
And that's the beautiful thing about Phoenix is down in turn 1 and 2. You can really, if you want to, you can drive it in pretty deep. And if you can get the car turned and you can stay on the outside of your opponent, you can make that pass on the high side. Or if you want to choose to drive down to the bottom, if you have really good forward momentum through the middle of the corner, you can get to somebody's inside and use your advantage of drive off if you have it on the exit as well from the low side. So there's options here. I'd say less options in 3 and 4 historically. However, in the Real Cup race in 3 and 4, we did see quite a few drivers actually be able to make the high side work. In the past, that wasn't really a thing, but in more recent times, the high side has been more viable in 3 and 4.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised just how well the high side worked. My mind goes back to Noah Gregson in the Xfinity race. The high side was working extremely well for him, and William Byron was using it to very good effect on Sunday. You can see right now the battle on your screen. The 72 car of Michael Krobach looking to nab 6th position away from the 24 car of Cody Dempster. Just behind him are the 2 previous champs, though, hunting these guys down. Jeff Ward in the 9, Scott Eckrich in the 70 car. These guys are not to be trifled with. Michael Krobach wants to make sure he can keep his 2 championship competitors within sight. He needs to make sure he stays ahead of those 2 guys, but Kenny, it's going to be super hard, as we've seen pretty much all season long.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the George and Yazik and Krobach are all relatively even when it comes to pace. I mean, I will say this though, this track may very well suit Krobach's style if we have long green flag runs like what looks like we might be having right here. Just being very patient on the throttle, patient with the steering wheel, patient with the traffic, really fits Krobach's style. So that could, fit him for the long haul in this race. But I will say, as far as like single car speed, Yazik and George, that this track looks to be suiting them as well. As Yazik's up 5 spots already, George is up 6 spots already, and they're both up ahead of Krobach. So I think this track could potentially suit all 3 of these championship drivers in some way.
Yeah, some way, shape, or form, it definitely is going to check off a lot of boxes of all these drivers' different strong suits. You look at a guy like Thomas George, he's very strong in the short tracks. Phoenix, technically it could be considered a short track. It's a mile long, but typically when we talk about short track, we talk about a half a mile around there. So your Martinsvilles and your Bristols. Thomas won the early race at Martinsville. He was extremely fast there last week. Didn't have the best of luck by the end of the race, but still very fast. This place with its lack of banking in very long, wide corners where you really need to have that patience in terms of judging your mid-corner speed, making sure you stop enough and when to get back on the throttle, really suits a guy like Thomas. I'm not too surprised to see him so far up the field, currently leading the race. But you talk about Michael Krobach just saving his tires. This place is abrasive. Not as abrasive as old Atlanta or maybe Darlington, but it's certainly up there in terms of chewing up the tires.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's one of those places where you can drive really hard for a little bit and think you're actually doing okay on tire wear, and then all of a sudden you kind of fall off a cliff. And you'll almost see at one point in a run, you'll see almost a light switch flipped where you all of a sudden start to see these certain drivers that actually save their stuff become much faster than the drivers around them. At least that's my experience from the driver's seat that I've found, is that at Phoenix, it's like you feel all right, but you don't find out until later on in the run whether or not you truly saved your stuff. And when that time happens, it becomes very evident. You probably won't see these top 4 or 5 drivers so close to each other if 1 or 2 of them did not actually save their tires as much as the others.
Oh yeah, every race I've run here at Phoenix, you don't really tell who saved their tires until about 30 laps, maybe even 40 laps into the run. And tonight the fuel window, Kenny, again, that 75% distance. Whoa, caution on the speedway. That's Cody Dempster sideways. Oh, he collects his teammate there, Jordan Harnich, and I think Scott Eckridge has a whole lot of damage on the front end of that 70 car.
Yeah, so the 24 car in Dempster here lost it all by himself.
Oh, man, that was a hard lick.
Yeah, nowhere for Eckridge to go, and heavy damage on both sides of his race car. And then he backs across the track, didn't really hold the brakes, and then Harnish got collected in as well. So at least a 3-car accident there. I think Harnish will be okay. Actually, a really good save by him.
Yeah, he did a phenomenal job to catch that car. This is an overhead view. You see Cody Dempster, the rear end just starts to step out. Scott Eckridge doesn't know what's going on, and all of a sudden, bam, there's a car in his way. He's in the wall. I think Scott's probably going to have some pretty severe mechanical damage on that car, definitely in terms of suspension. But Kenny, we've got pretty much the entire field down pit road at the moment.
Yeah, just about everybody coming down here. And this is lap 33, so we're definitely beyond that kind of average length of run in order to make your tire sets last the entire race. So no surprise to see everybody come down here. They'll get 4 fresh tires and we'll head back out and we'll reset and we'll see who wins the race off pit road.
Looks like Thomas George is going to have them done and dusted by the time they get off of pit road. You'll see the leaderboard start to correct itself the more the guys trickle out of pit road. We're going to take a quick break here for a commercial. We'll be right back right after this.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started.
Welcome back to the MC Squared Editing Services, leading the way 250K live from Phoenix Raceway. You're watching the Virtual Grip Network. This is the Pretty Good Racing League. MC Squared Editing Services always goes the extra mile to take your document across the finish line. Whether it's a resume, cover letter, grant proposal, article, or content for your website, MC Squared Editing Services will help you stand out. For a free quote for all PGRL fans, you can contact Pretty Good Racing League at gmail.com. MC Squared, leading the way in editing services. Lights are out atop the iRacing pace car, currently the top 5 on the racetrack as they run. Thomas George, Brian Yazik, Adam Jersky, Jeff Ward, Mike Rasmus round out your top 5. In terms of the top 10, it's Michael Krobach, Greg O'Berry, Chance Manning, Pete Baskins, Django Matthews rounds out the top 10. All 3 of our championship competitors are within that top 6 fighting spots. Currently, if Thomas George were to win the race with Brian Yazik still in second position, Thomas George would win the championship outright. Michael Krobach a little bit too far back right now to defend the championship title hopes. Thomas George puts his foot on the loud pedal. He starts to scoot away from the rest of the field. A huge start by him. Lots of these guys continue to put their foot on the loud pedal super early, still down the backstretch, because again, that pace car is off the track. Look at how wide these guys are going down into turn 1, Kenny.
Yeah, and that was interesting to see two of our title contenders start next to each other for the first time there. And George prevails. Yazik slips into second, though. And Jeff Ward, though, he is putting on a clinic so far, already up to third place from his very deep starting position of 22nd.
I'm looking at Brian Yazik right now still. You know, he's going to need to win this race if he wants any shot at winning the championship. He's 9 points behind Thomas George, 18 points behind currently for the 72 car of Michael Krobach. So he's got a lot to do if he wants to win this race. Currently, if they were to finish how they're running right now, Thomas George would win the championship by a handful of points over Brian Yazik. Michael Krobach a little bit too far back. Michael Krobach would still finish in second place, but boy, he's looking at his championship currently waving him bye-bye right now.
Yeah, and you know, Yazik especially, he's going to need the most help out of the three title contenders. So he needs to just go out there, try to just grab as many points as he can, and just honestly hope that the other two drivers have a little bit of problem. You see him get a little bit loose there off of turn 2, got nearly into the outside wall. Looks like he's really driving hard here, trying to run down that 6 car and see if he can control this race.
Yeah, my mind goes back to, you know, if any one of these three title contenders, you know, anyone but them didn't win that Drew Carroll Safe Driver Bonus Award, Krobach would not have a 9-point lead over Thomas George. He'd be 1 point back, and then it'd be an additional 8 points back to Brian Yazik. So that the Safe Driving Bonus Award for Michael Krobach is really paying him dividends right now. And, you know, boy, you know, it pays to be a safe driver. More often than not, you don't have the, you know, as much trouble as other guys. And in this league, it pays you 10 points.
Yeah, that's actually a really nice incentive. Not a lot of leagues actually have a bonus like that, and actually has appeared to have come in clutch for Krobach here, at least to set him up for a championship. Not necessarily going to guarantee him one, but is really going to give him a much better shot at it. And on top of that, Krobach has had much more momentum coming into this race, and you can't tell me the momentum isn't a real thing. Momentum is huge when it comes to these kind of events. How often do you see a driver peak too early and then not really do much when it comes to the end of the season? But Krobach has really built up the momentum through this last season of 2022 and has been just ripping off good finish after good finish with some victories in there as well.
He certainly has. Krobach is the only one of our three title contenders. He really only came on strong in the second half of the season, and I don't mean taking the point lead like Thomas George did over Brian Yazik. He started to win races and consistently finish within the top 3 spots. But Kenny, looking up at the front of the field, I'm watching all 3 of our 3 front runners come off at turn 2, and Brian Yazik consistently has to put a lot more wheel into it coming off the corner. He's snapping the back end around just to make sure he doesn't hit the wall.
Yeah, and that could be a sign, kind of foreshadowing for later as far as his tire wear goes. It could also be, you know, he's trying to drive up off of these corners, but he's kind of stuck up behind the 6 car. He's in the wake of the 6 car, so he's really having to fight his car in order to allow it to have the same kind of speed off the corner that George has. So in order to try to keep up, he's really having to push the car more than what George has to in his own car.
Yeah, I mean, even that last camera angle there coming off of turn 2, you saw Brian Yazik way out by the wall already, and Jeff Ward was still rounding off the corner.
And right here, this is what I wanted to see here from Yazik, is something different. Take advantage of the different racing lines here at Phoenix, and just try to run where the driver in front of you isn't. Now, I think in turn 3 and 4 here, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. I don't think that iRacing is going to be... I don't think the high line here in iRacing is going to be quite as suitable in 3 and 4 as what it is in real life. But down in 1 and 2, tons of options down here. And look at, you see Yazik there kind of staggering his car off of what George is doing, not really running exactly in his tire tracks. You can't get by somebody by going through them anyway, so you need to change your line up at some point and see if you can get creative and get around them.
Yeah, and since Brian started to, kind of adventure with what he was doing, start to test out, try out different lines, vary his strategy, he has since started to leave Jeff Ward behind. He's been catching up to Thomas George more laps often than not. So he's getting closer and closer the more he continues to kind of just adventure out in those different lines, and it's working for him so far.
Yeah, and don't look now, but Michael Krobach has peaked into the top 5 now. You see him in the background. There he is, right there with Mike Rasmus right behind him. So he's right here. He can see his title contenders right in front of him here, and is just kind of sitting back here, a decent line of cars at the moment behind the leader. And I'm not so sure that they're stuck behind Thomas George necessarily, but these drivers are all just pretty even on pace.
Yeah, pretty even on pace, and I'm sure Jeff Ward, if he really wanted to, he could probably go out there and pass Brian Yazek and then run down Thomas George. But, 20 laps from now, his tires would be hurting for certain. He would not be in a good position, and immediately, once his tires started to fall off, he'd be passed by Thomas George, he'd be passed by Brian Yazek, he'd be passed by Adam Jersky, Michael Krobach, Mike Rasmus. He'd find himself outside of the top 10 within about another 20 laps short of taking the lead, or after taking the lead, rather.
And you're actually starting to see drivers like Jeff Ward cheat his way up further and further up the track in turn 1 and 2, which that will be a pretty popular thing to do. And, if the driver in front of you goes to the middle line, well, you go up 1 lane higher. We'll see what they do this time. You see, look at how high up Jeff Ward's entering there, way higher than anybody else that we've seen so far, then kind of cutting down, just experimenting right now. He's got a decent bit of a gap back to Adam Jersky, so he's just trying these different lines. But you see down in 3 and 4, pretty much everybody wrapping the bottom.
Everybody continues to wrap the bottom in turns 3 and 4, just like kind of saw how, what we saw in real life a couple years ago. It was only very recently that we saw the top line sort of start to come in. Before that, there's only really one guy running, and that was Dale Jr. And what did it do for him in 2017? Well, he blew a right front tire and hit the wall. That was the end of his race. So, only very recently did the top line in turns 3 and 4 really start to come. And, of course, back then it was 1 and 2.
Right, and that's it. That corner is so deceiving. You think that you can drive so much harder through it than you actually can, and it's really important to get as close down to that yellow line as possible. Even touch the yellow line, which I'm not seeing these drivers do. They're leaving up a little bit of a gap between their left front and that yellow line, but running the bottom regardless is what you need to do. And sometimes it actually, you kind of need like a shallow entry in order to get down to the bottom, which we still do see in real life in these cars here, just to ensure that you'll stay down on the bottom and allow the car to rotate. You don't want to miss that lane by a full car width or something, because that will be a decent loss of time.
Yeah, it used to always be you wanted to enter turns 3 and 4 super shallow just to make sure you got the car all the way down to the bottom, and then you could go ahead and throttle up off the corner. Of course, you swing all the way up to the wall, and then you go ahead and cut the dog leg about as much as possible. But anymore with these new cars, they have a lot stiffer suspension. We have all the ground effect for aero on these cars. Really upsets them if you do anything sort of to change that ride height with these things. So going onto the apron is one of those, and with cold tires, you don't want to do that whatsoever. You want to stay up on the track, up by where it's banked above the yellow line. Once the tires start to get warmed up, maybe about 4 or 5 laps in, you see a lot of guys start to do that. That's when it's kind of safe to start doing that. But boy, 20, 30 laps into a tire run, you can't continue to do that because the tires are they're so chewed up, and they lack the grip they had earlier on in the going. If you want to start doing this whole apron riding thing where you cut the dog leg, your car is going to get super loose, just the same way it would have when you only had maybe a lap or 2 on them.
Yeah, and you're not really seeing the leaders cut the dog leg really at all. I mean, a lot of times you'll see drivers only do that when they're going for a pass on somebody, just to get that little bit of distance on their opponent. And me personally, I basically only use the apron on restarts when you can gain the most amount of spots from doing that. I don't think it's really worth upsetting the car for just gaining a few feet here and there. But one thing I'm noticing here is there's a gap now between second and third. Jeff Ward has kind of lost touch with these leaders, now feeling a little bit of heat here from Krobach. That's a little bit surprising to me. Thought that the 9 was going to be, if anything, going to get stronger and stronger through the run, but he could also be just kind of holding back a little bit, or he could be struggling because we did see him really experimenting with the lines. You see the back end getting a little bit twitchy for the 9 car, and I've seen it. Yeah, there you go. He's loose off a turn 2. I've seen him do that multiple laps now.
Kenny, update here on Adam Chersky. He was the driver in 4th position, the person that used to be being hounded by Michael Krobach. He has since come down pit road, lost a handful of spots in the last couple laps. But yeah, Michael Krobach making his way now up into the podium positions. I have to say, I'm surprised as well. Usually we see Jeff Ward just running, as JR kind of coined it, a Jeff Ward of a race, which means you go out there, you run the exact lap time you want. Before too long, you're going to be up at the front of the field leading this race and go on to win it.
And there you go. Jersky is actually disconnected from the race, so Adam Jersky out of this one. So that's hope everything's okay. But he looked like he just kind of pulled into the pits and called it quits.
Yeah, he was having an extremely strong night before then, running in the top 5 all day. This is kind of one of his tracks. He's one of those drivers very good at sort of those oddball tracks. I'd say this is one of them. Not a whole lot of banking in the corners, and especially turns 1 and 2. A very oddball sort of layout. It's kind of a mixture between maybe a Richmond and a New Hampshire, where you just, you're off the throttle waiting. You have to be so patient. That corner takes forever, Kenny.
Yeah, it really does. But the beauty about how these rolling corners are designed is that, you can let off the throttle pretty early and let the car just roll and do its thing. And you feel like you're going so slow. You feel like you should be in the throttle more, but you're actually not even really giving up that much lap time. Sometimes you might actually be going faster. In my opinion, Phoenix is kind of the definition of a slower is faster kind of racetrack. That's the kind of rhythm you need to build here, the kind of smoothness that you need in order to go fast consistently here.
Mike Rasmus, all Mr. Consistency, currently hounding the rear end of the number 9 car of Jeff Ward. He's looking for a way to get by. These 2 cars only came together about a lap or 2 ago, and ever since then, Mike Rasmus has been basically glued to the number 9 so far in this race. Mike having a pretty good day, of course. He started in 11th place, currently running in 3rd. And old Jeff Ward, he started tail end of the field 22nd. So these guys have both gained a tremendous amount of position since the start of this race, but I think Jeff Ward's tires a little bit too sore for this point.
Yeah, he's showing a lot of discomfort here in turns 1 and 2, especially on exit. The car's really wanting to wiggle and get sideways, and that's leaving him vulnerable with not having the drive off that he needs. And Rasmus now all over the back end of him. It could also be a thing where Jeff Ward really was pushing the issue at the beginning, just to kind of see how much track position he could gain. We're going to have a few more runs than this throughout the rest of the race, so he's kind of just maybe taking some notes and learning a few things, maybe knows to dial it back for the next run.
And that's one of the things, too, we've seen in Jeff Ward more often than not. If he burns up his stuff in the first run, you're not going to see that happen out of the 9 car for the rest of the night. Up closer to the front of the field, Michael Krobach has gotten a whole heck of a lot closer to the rear end of Brian Yazik. He's not within striking distance just yet, Kenny, but he's close enough to just kind of let him know, hey, I'm here. If you make a single mistake, I'm going to have you. And just ahead of that, Michael would be doing everything he needs to go ahead and keep this championship on lock. Of course, if Thomas George goes on to win the race, it's 6 more points than Michael Krobach. If he leads the most laps, including that lap he's already gotten, he's going to get another 4 points. And that would currently, even if he wins the race and Michael Krobach finishes second, George still wins the championship. So Krobach, all 3 of these guys really have a whole lot left to play for. There's still about 100 laps left in the race.
Yeah, 100 laps seems like a lot, but really, it's really not that much. This race.
Oh boy, Yazik got loose. He's going to allow Krobach to be outside.
Yeah, Yazik got really loose off of 2 and just pretty much gave the spot to Krobach, as he knew that he left himself vulnerable there, and that's going to give another spot to the 72 car, and he will see if he can run down Thomas George. And Krobach's been running really good lap times and has been running these leaders down. But George is doing exactly what he needs to do. As we take a look at the replay here, this is actually Django Matthews going for a slide. That's that apron you can
save.
Well, almost 2 saves.
Yeah, almost another good save.
But no caution, because no traffic was nearby. iRacing's been doing a better job of that, of not calling cautions if the spun out car isn't near anybody else on track. So we stay green here.
Yeah, 14 car jumps down pit road, see if he can't get himself some more fresh feel goods. Go back out onto the track. These guys currently continue to, they're getting a lot closer to more lap down traffic. The first of which is John Wilco. He's been put a third lap down by leader Thomas George. So far, Django is currently only 1 lap down. We'll see if that changes this time across the stripe. Well, Michael Krobach getting really loose there down to the inside of John Wilco, trying to see if he can't put him in a lap down himself.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of what it's like when you're trying to get that aggressive drive off when you have somebody on your outside, because you're having to turn the wheel more than what you want, but you're trying to apply the same amount of throttle as you normally would. And a lot of times the cars just don't want to play that game and they want to spin out. And that's where things become a little bit tricky. Here's another look. Looks like Isaiah Dupre coming out of the pit area, dealing with the apron transition there.
Yeah, that's a third spin out for him. He came out just ahead of Thomas George, the leader, and that's again in turns 3 and 4 there down to the inside. So he's having a really difficult time. You see, he made it back out onto the racetrack once again. He's just behind leader Thomas George. I was going to be really interested to see just how fast Django was coming off of pit road, because I think the tire fall off right now, Kenny, is about 2 seconds on these older tires.
Yeah, so at the moment, a lot of the best laps, for example, Thomas George and Brian Yazik, their best laps are both at 27.66. And last time by, they both ran in the 29.40s, so about 1.8 seconds of fall off right now, which is a lot. I mean, that is a ton of fall.
Not through a whole fuel cycle yet either.
No, not really even close. I mean, these drivers, they pit on lap 33. So, I mean, they can go to around lap 100. So, I mean, we still got a while if they want to extend the fuel run all the way to the end.
Yeah, we're about 2/3 through a fuel cycle, so these guys are going to continue to throw down some laps here. And, Kenny, if these guys do manage to pit at lap 100, that sets them up basically perfectly for running these things dry about 5 laps after the race would end. So these guys are going to be within their fuel window of basically one more stop before the end of this race, and it's all going to come down to, they can do about 65 to 66 laps on a tank of fuel. So maybe do you come down pit road at about lap 90 and try and set up your competitors maybe for an undercut, try to save just a tick of fuel before the end of the race?
Well, I was about to say that lap 90 is going to be about the aggressive cutoff as far as when the fuel window will open. But these drivers could drive until maybe lap 95, lap 100 on this current tank of fuel. So I think that between lap 90 and 100 is about when you're going to start seeing start and finish the pit cycle here. But yeah, I think it'd be...
Oh, Thomas George goes for a really big slide. Sorry, Kenny. Just looking at him, he was all over the track. Look at Django Matthews get all the way up to his rear bumper.
And
he was going to wreck.
Well, and that's again he actually went down to the apron in turn 1 and 2. Maybe tried something a little bit different, and it looks like the apron is really just making these cars over-rotate way too much as everybody's getting upset down there.
Yeah, well, it sort of de-wedges the car, and what de-wedge means is it sort of upsets it enough to go ahead and help it turn. It creates some extra looseness in the setup, and when we talk about loose, we mean the rear end steps out from the front of the car, so it makes it rotate a little bit easier, helps it to turn. You see one car now coming down onto pit road. I believe that's Michael Krobach.
Yeah, that is Krobach, and this seems early to me. I mean, we still got over like 80 laps to go in this thing.
Kenny, it could be that, tire management is so crucial for these guys. Maybe it's one of those Darlington situations where, we ran into this, I think, last year in the Southern 500. It was faster to split one total stint into 2 half ones just based on tire wear. Would not be too surprised if this is what Krobach was doing here, or he just thinks a caution's going to come out before, basically, for him, I'm going to say lap 130.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost thinking it's more of the former, that it's that Krobach's going to maybe take these tires and run for another about 40 laps or so and pit around lap maybe 110, 115, and then go another 40 or so laps to the finish. But Yazik now coming in, so maybe Krobach... Oh, Yazik spins into pit lane, but he's able to he's able to wrangle it in. Didn't hit anything, I don't think. No, he did not. He actually did.
Yeah, Ryan, if we could get a replay of this, I mean, he does just a complete pirouette. I don't know how in the world he didn't hit the inside retaining wall with the rear end of his car, or the outside wall for that matter. It kind of shades of Jimmy Johnson at Dover in 2006, and there was another car spinning out just behind him.
Looks like pit entry a lot trickier than what I had first suspected. This is usually
yellow flag,
and now yellow out. Yeah.
I think it was Woody Mahan going for a spin just behind him. And boy, this is really going to hose a whole lot of pit strategy for these guys. Yeah, Woody Mahan went for another spin. And this is the cause for caution here. This is Jordan Harnish spinning out. I think this was him, Kenny, trying to make his way down to pit road.
Yeah, I think it was. And these drivers are just realizing that the apron in turn 1 and 2 is just a bad place.
I mean, this is going to completely hose the strategy here for all these guys that just came down pit road. Now look at who's going to benefit here. Thomas George, Mike Rasmus, all the guys that started to bleed spots in time before the end of this. You see Cody Dempster. I know that's Cody Dempster, Greg O'Berry coming in, Chance Manning as well.
Well, at least for Yazek and Krobach, they are one lap down, but they will be able to take a wave round, so they're not, completely out of it.
But they're going to be at the tail end of the field.
Correct, and Krobach especially, he just got into second place, and now is going to have to basically make up all the spots that he made up at the beginning. So,
for Krobach, I don't like.
Krobach's actually a lucky dog.
Oh wow, yeah. So he can at least pit if he wanted to. He's still going to get EOL'd here. This might actually be worse for him, because he gets a penalty here, end of the longest line, so I don't know if he'll start behind or in front of Yazek before everything's all said and done. But, yeah, I mean, saving grace for these guys. They're only one lap down. In Krobach's case, he does get the lucky dog, but Krobach, all he had to do was kind of stay in second or win the race to win the championship. Yazek, I definitely agree with that strategy. You got to come down pit road, do something, divergent or different than your competitors to try and see if you can't work the strategy, or maybe some bad luck falls in your opponent's laps.
Yeah, I am a little bit surprised that Krobach came up with that strategy, unless that was something that he had planned from the beginning. But
it's risky.
Yeah, I mean, if he had that mindset of just trying to do something very different, that's a little bit surprising to me, considering the whole championship thing and him having the championship lead. And it looked like he had plenty of pace to keep up with Thomas. I mean, if I were him, I almost would have pitted about the same time as Thomas and then just kind of race him straight up, because I feel like over the long haul, Krobach had the pace to just straight up beat him.
He did. I mean, he was catching before the end, and you saw that slide that Thomas took there in turns 1 and 2 a couple laps. I think the lap before Krobach even went down pit road, I think it was only going to be a matter of time before he ran him down and took the lead. And for Krobach, it's so important to just lead a single lap. You get that bonus point, and you make sure that your championship competitor, Thomas George, doesn't lead the most laps. And that's another 3 positions on the track you have to now compete with, sort of just to make sure he stays kind of within your realm of, I can still beat him on points straight up in the championship.
Again, I know it's not even, we're barely halfway, but I would pretty much hand that bonus now already to Thomas George as far as leading the most laps today. I mean, he's been out front for quite some time, and he doesn't have to lead much longer before he's going to reach the leading halfway point.
Yeah, I mean, we're more than halfway through the race right now, like you said. And I mean, 1/2 of 150, 75 you had on the extra 6. That's like 78 laps, and I feel like he hasn't been out leading much more than the 81 lap, or much less than 81. So it's getting really close. He's going to have this locked up. iRacing pace car pulls down pit road, gives command of the field back over to Thomas George in the 6th machine. And boy, for George, he had basically, I mean, this thing was pretty much going to be done and dusted before the end of the season, before we cut into drop weeks, and before we cut into that safe driver bonus award. Look at how early he's going to get this thing back, restarted as the drivers now shoot down into turns 1 and 2. Look at Greg O'Berry. He's Mr. Where did he come from?
I remember Greg, he spun out earlier all by himself. Oh, we have another self-spin.
Oh, that's Cody Dempster. No, Pete Baskins. It's two cars have very similar paint schemes. Baskins is going to careen into the inside wall, bounce back off of it, get that car slowed down again. Kenny, the reason we didn't have the caution, he was on the apron. We'll now transition back. This is a replay of what happened. He just touches the apron, gets super loose there. Might have been upshifting too, Kenny.
Yeah, he could have been, and I don't know if he even really, he didn't use the apron much, if at all. And just, yeah, I mean, he just barely nicked the inside line there, that yellow line. I don't even think that did it. I think maybe it was an upshift or just got loose by turning through that dog leg.
So now it's going to be all up to Michael Krobach to see how fast he can make it here up through the field. And it would be Thomas George's in championship. Even if Krobach finishes in second, if George wins the race and leads the most laps, he's going to have a 10-point bonus back to Michael Krobach. So I mean, he's only got a 9-point gap coming in. Krobach basically has to finish second. He has to lead a lap if Thomas George is going to win the race and lead the most laps. Otherwise, it'd be a straight tie. I don't know what the tiebreakers are. That there's something about pistols at 20 paces or something, maybe to determine who'd be the champion. But it's all going to come down to the wire here.
I think one thing that is going to help Yazik and Krobach here is the fact that we're not done pitting. The drivers cannot make it to the end on this tank of fuel, so there's still a lot of strategy to be played out. And if this goes green to the end, there's going to be a lot of variance in when that last pit stop can take place, because the fuel window to make it to the end is almost open already, but we've just gone green, so I don't expect people to pit right away, but that window will open up, and it'll be open for quite some time.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say either that a driver other than Thomas George couldn't win this race. I mean, Jeff Ward is still extremely fast. Michael Krobach is still in it. Heck, even Brian Yazik could win it. And I feel like right now, if you're Michael Krobach, you're saying, if I can't win this race, I want Jeff Ward or basically anybody else but Thomas George to win the race.
Yeah, just to keep them bonus points off of the board, which would just absolutely kill his points lead. And looking back through the field right now, you see, taking a look there, Jordan Harnish battling there, trying to recover. He's had a kind of an off day at the office, trying to keep the car under control, as a few of these drivers have had issues, but trying to get through the top 10 here, side by side in front of him between Ward and Dupre.
And Jeff Ward went all the way down to the bottom of the track trying to shortcut that dog leg. He's going to shoot down to the inside of Isaiah Dupre. And oh man, Isaiah Dupre didn't like that. Went ahead and gave Jeff a little bit of a tap in turns 1 and 2. And now Michael Krobach has got to be wondering, how am I going to get my way around these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think Krobach's just going to be really calculating about it. He does have a teammate that he's approaching here in Dupre, who I don't think will fight him too hard, but I've been wrong in the past. But they go down into 1 and 2. Looks like Dupre is going to drive down in there. But, you know, Krobach's just, I think he's going to continue to approach this race how he has been this entire time, and just slowly but surely making his way through the field. He did it once, he can do it again.
Well, you also have to think about, too, what got Michael Krobach in this position, doing exactly what he's done all season. He takes his time getting up through the field. He gets out of the car what it'll give him. Doesn't overdrive the equipment, doesn't underdrive it. He just has a, Michael Krobach kind of day, kind of sits in the weeds, has a good race more often than not by the end of the day. So, if you've been doing something all season long to get yourself in this position, do not go ahead and just remake the wheel. You don't need that. You don't need to reinvent it. Just do what you've been doing all season, and hopefully by the end of the day, you'll be in that same position. You come out of this with the big victory.
Yeah, I think, sticking to the game plan and not doing really anything different than you normally would is pretty important in a championship race like this. Watching Jeff Ward here, he's been fun to watch because he is the only driver that's really been exploring the high lines in turn 1 and 2. You see what it does too. Gives him a nice little run down to 3 and 4 on Chance Manning, and he used the bottom side, and that's what I like to see right there. Really actually hooking the bottom and nearly touching that yellow line to get the nice drive off. That was a textbook pass by the 9 car.
Oh, he really used the apex of that corner, just kind of the apron a little bit, to just help rotate the car. Phenomenal move by him. Goes and puts it all the way up almost to the wall in turns 1 and 2. You can see loses a lot of time in the center of the corner, but he gets so much speed coming off of it, it's not even funny. He's going to have the distance this time to Cody Dempster in the 24. I think in about 2 or 3 laps, he's going to have him.
I'm interested to see what this does for Jeff Ward's tire wear, though. I mean, he is kind of, he's using less wheel input driving up the track on the entry, but on the exit, middle to exit, he's really turning the wheel to get the car to come back down the track, and that could hurt his tire wear later on in the run.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing, because we saw Jeff Ward doing almost that same exact thing, kind of going up in the center of the corner. We call that diamonding, because you look at it from a top-down view, it does look like a diamond. You go in pretty much straight, get the car turned, rotated in the middle, go straight out of the corner, the diamond line. Doesn't do a whole lot of good to your tires in the exact middle, but it's a whole lot easier on them going into the corners. So that's one of the benefits it has. And also the other benefit, you get a whole lot of straightaway speed coming out of it going down into the next set of corners. But, we saw Jeff Ward do that in the earlier stint today, and by the end of it, he did not have tires. We saw him fall into the field, so I'll be curious to see how this is going to work out for him. Michael Krobach gets around Desire Dupre. Now he still has to make his way around Chance Manning and Jordan Harnish to catch back up to the rear end of Jeff Ward, the 9 car.
The other problem with running that higher line is that, you're carrying more speed up at the top. That's how you make the top line work. But you're working the front tires more. You're putting more force and load on those tires if you go in with so much pace. Sometimes if you're turning the wheel more on the bottom line, that puts more load on the tires, but speed puts more load on the tires too. And if you're just carrying too much speed, especially in the middle of the corner, that can also hurt those front tires in the end.
Yeah, lots of things you can do, so many different variables. Currently, the variable at the front of the field is the number 6 car of Thomas George. If he finishes where he is as they're running right now, he's the champion, doing everything he needs to. Mike Rasmus, Mr. Consistency. It's been nice to have him back when the races he continues to make towards the end of this season. Always nice to have Mr. Consistency in the 68 car round. Greg O'Berry just behind these guys rounds out the podium positions. Cody Dempster in the 24 is in the 4th position. Well, Jeff Ward is currently in 5th. He's your Season 2 champion. Look at it come here, go back-to-back in terms of winning the last race of the season. No, he didn't do that either. That's my bad. That was Brian Yazek.
Another good run for Greg O'Berry, and we talked to him last week. He finally got a podium finish, 3rd place last week at Martinsville, and he, you could hear the relief in his voice. So he's just like, man, we finally finished one of these things where we've been running, and I think that's kind of helped O'Berry ride a little bit of momentum here to finish the season, and hopefully for him it carries him off into next season. We see this almost every year in NASCAR where certain drivers will kind of turn it on at the end of the year, and maybe you're not necessarily paying much attention to them because they're not a championship favorite, but certain drivers kind of show up and have a lot of momentum towards the very end of the season.
Cody Dempster all over the rear end right now of Greg O'Berry. Back further through the field, currently your champion going into tonight, championship points leader rather. Michael Krobach made his way around Chance Manning. That moves Michael Krobach up into the 7th position. Now it's up to Krobach to see how fast he can catch up to and then pass Jordan Harnish at the number 22 car for the 6th position. So far, though, he's been having a really difficult time trying to pull away there from Chance Manning in the 54 car. As you see, Cody Dempster, he shoots to the inside of O'Berry, old contact.
Yeah, it looked like a mix of two drivers who didn't want to give. Dempster wanted to make that pass as quickly as possible. O'Berry didn't want to give it to him, so he kind of stuck down on his door, and Dempster took the space anyway.
Yeah, they just really collided in the center there. And now Jeff Ward is right on basically the back bumper of the 97 car of Greg O'Berry, so that might move Jeff Ward up another position sooner rather than later. And, don't sleep right now on Jordan Harnish either, that 22 car. He's been super fast, and, if he could just barely finish a race where he's running, he'd be doing a lot better in the championship. This kid's got a whole lot of speed under his car. It just, he needs to put an entire race together.
Yeah, this season he's got 1 top 5 and 3 top 10s, but that has not really shown where he's ran. He hasn't led a ton of laps, but he seems to have been
up there though.
Yeah, he's been
competitive.
Top 5, top 10 quite often in these races. Just hasn't really another one of those drivers that really just hasn't been able to finish off that last 20% or so of a race.
It's guys like him Woody Mahan. If Woody Mahan would just not have bad luck, he doesn't need to have good luck. If he just didn't have any of the bad luck he's had, he'd be up there fighting with this guys for the championship every single season this year. Same thing goes for a guy like Jordan Harnish. You know, even Mike Rasmus. Mike, we call him Mr. Consistency for a reason. Like half the, 90% of the time he shows up for a race, he finishes on the podium, at least in the top 5. If Mike showed up for every race, and of course, it's sim racing, it's not your main living. Sometimes family obligations come up. Sometimes, kids got soccer practice you got to go to, or a band recital you have to show up for. You have to end up missing the race. There's a lot of guys, if everybody showed up, finished where they ran, there'd be like 7 or 8 different guys with a chance to win the shot at the title by the end of the season. It's not even comical how many guys are at just such a high performance level in this league.
And speaking of Woody Mahan, too, he's actually kind of struggled today. He's been outside the top 10 most of the day, back in 12th place. There's a look at him kind of all by himself right now. And I've been kind of watching him and Brian Yazik trying to get back up through the field after he got a waiver on. He's only in 11th place right now. So neither of these drivers, who are typically top 10 drivers, have been they've been kind of underwhelming here since we got restarted.
And to be fair, this isn't really a Woody Mahan kind of track. I felt like he'd do a little bit better than the 12th. He'd be maybe like a 7th to 10th place driver at the end of the day. He might still get there. He could be saving his tires. We saw him do that at, I think, Las Vegas, maybe Kansas. He was just kind of riding around with Scott Eckrich and Michael Krobach all day long. Scott especially, just saving his tires, really came on hot at the end. We interviewed him at the end of the race because he finished on the podium. You can see 2 guys really going at it. That was Chance Manning and Isaiah Dupre. Looks like Dupre's going for a slide.
Oh, and Dupre just cleared in front of Manning there. Really took that line away. Manning going to come back at him. Manning, one of the most aggressive drivers in this league here, going to fight back on Dupre. And these drivers, a little bit of contact off of 4.
A touch. These guys are not giving each other very much room. I can't imagine that Chance really liked that, but I mean, Isaiah was all the way up the track. There's not much more room he could have given. And look at him, he almost gets back to the back of Isaiah's car there, just trying to give barely just a nudge. Whoa, Isaiah got extremely loose. He has to hold on to that car. Big save.
It's going to really help Rich Jetty. He's going to get around Dupre, at least for the time being. We'll have to try to hold off the 86 car off of turn 4. These drivers give each other plenty of room. You see Yazik there in the background, and then up forward here we see Harnish and Jeff Ward side by side, and right behind him is Michael Krobach looking for 2.
Yeah, Michael Krobach, look at him, split him 3 wide. He's got jokers to the left, clowns to the right, if that's going to happen. Harnish still to the inside, Jeff Ward up high. This is Michael Krobach. He's in what we like to call the popcorn position. Oh man, he tried to slide that car to the inside of Jeff Ward.
Harnish loose off of turn 4. That's going to open up another opportunity here for Ward to get to his inside. We'll see how deeply he decides to drive it in here into turn 1.
Man, I've still got my eyes locked on. There's another battle just behind these guys for 8th position between Chance Manning and Isaiah Dupre. This one, though, this one's for all the marbles. Look at these guys. They continue to swap, just dive bombs, slide jumps. Brian Yazik right behind these two. They continue to go at it side by side in turns 3 and 4. Just up ahead of these guys, though, there's still that 3-wide battle for the 4th position, 5th, excuse me.
Yeah, decent bit of battles here all of a sudden at this point in the run. And you see Dupre made the pass again on Manning, and now we're looking again at Krobach, who has cleared Ward. He got to the outside of Jeff Ward last lap on the exit of turn 2 and was able to rip on by him, and now Ward's kind of dropped off of this battle a little bit.
Yeah, this is a battle again for the 8th position. Currently, it's in the hands of Isaiah Dupre. Coming out of turn 4, or turn 2, excuse me, the last time by. The Chance got all the way up to his eyes back bumper, started to give him a tap, thought better of it, backed off. That allowed for Brian Yazik to get to his inside. You see a 3rd car in the shot right here. That's John Wilco in the 62. He's 5 laps down, so he's not in this, but he's right there if something's going to happen to take advantage of that track position. Not really a position, though, for points anyways. Michael Krobach goes down to the inside of Jordan Harnish. Oh, man, look at 22 car went way up the track.
Yeah, not sure if that was intentional or not, but regardless, that'll be an easy pass for Krobach. But he is about...
Oh, Brian Yazik got extremely loose there off of 4, Kenny. He went all the way down to the apron. I think he just barely saved the car before making contact with the wall, but he certainly did move that pit exit cone.
Yeah, and he's lost all of the track position and then some that he just gained over the last 10 laps.
Slide. I mean, I don't know how he held on to this car.
Yeah, basically a copy of what like what Pete Baskins did earlier, except he didn't slam the inside wall. So a good job saving that car. But in the meantime, he's now 11 seconds behind the leader, and also a few seconds behind the next spot for position.
Yeah, and he's basically toasted his tires. I mean, he's going to want to come down pit road sooner than later. These guys are in their fuel window, though.
Yeah, and Yazik, right now, he's pitting. Yazik is coming down pit road. Now, if I were one of the leaders, I don't really think I would.
I'd stay out.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really care that Yazik's coming in. He's just too far back right now to really, change the outcome of this race with this strategy move. But we'll see. I was about to bring up wondering if Krobach will pit soon, just because we're well within our pit window. About 40 or so laps to go here, and Krobach is finally now in his own little space here where he can really dive down to pit road at any time that he wants and not have to really tell anybody he's going to do so, because nobody's really around him to bother.
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of the best spot you could be, because you don't really have to pipe up on the radio to say, hey, I'm coming down pit road. You can just surprise these guys when they're like, hey, I could have swore the 72 car was up there, and oh my gosh, he's just passed me on the outside with brand new tires. He's going about a whole 2 seconds a lap faster.
We'll say this, though. Krobach last time by was about a quarter second faster than our leader. So, I mean, Krobach likes the long run, so I don't blame him for trying to stay out a little while longer. So again, he was about not quite 2/10 faster than our leader, Thomas George. It's just he's got almost 5 seconds to make up, and I just don't know if that'll be, enough time to really catch him. But Rasmus here is trying to make a decent challenge for the lead.
Oh, he's been hounding him. He's been on his rear bumper, just kind of sitting, waiting in the weeds, kind of trying to size up his competition here the last maybe 30 laps or so since we had that most recent caution. He's been up there just kind of riding around in his wake, trying to analyze what he's doing, what makes him tick, where's all that speed coming from. 6 car, though, he's going to make the hard left turn down pit road, see if he can't get 4 fresh field goods before the end of this thing. This is the first guy to pit. Michael Krobach is going to come in right behind him. That's the distance in the championship right now.
Yeah, I think this is a decent move for Krobach. If he wasn't going to pit super duper early and try to, do the undercut on him, I think pitting about the same time is going to be okay. And I think what Krobach's strategy has to be now is, finish 4th or better for Krobach and just hope that Thomas George doesn't win this race.
Yeah, I mean, if Thomas George wins right now without Krobach leading a lap, it's basically going to hose Krobach's chances. I mean, he can finish 2nd, but it's still going to be Thomas George by a point. So he really has to hope that if he doesn't win, someone else other than Thomas George does. See the 2 cars now coming off of pit road. Looks like Thomas George is still going to have the advantage over Krobach. Looks like they might have the same kind of gap coming out of the pits as they did going in, but we're going to see just what happens before the end here.
Boy, and Krobach actually gained over 1.5 seconds in the pit cycle there. The pit stop.
Well, one car spinning on the apron. That was Chance Manning in the 54.
And he saved it, though. So we'll have to see if there's any problems on this pit cycle like what we saw earlier. Well, what I was saying is,
go ahead, Kenny.
What I was saying is Krobach had a 14.28 pit stop, and George had over a 15-second pit stop. So that's, a chunk of time gained right away. And if Krobach can be faster than George through this entire run, there's nothing saying that he won't be able to close that gap by the end of this race.
And this right here is the advantage that new tires have over old tires. You see Michael Krobach just picking up these cars and putting them down, passing Cody Dempster on the outside. Look out for Rich Jennings, the 36. They're going to go 3 wide coming off the corner.
Yeah, and this really is what Michael Krobach did not need coming out of the pits here. He needs clean racetrack, and he needs no battles near him. And Cody Dempster actually going to clear him for position, so that's going to hurt him as well. And you take a look there, Brian Yazik behind. He made his pit stop already, so that's all the spots or track position he's gained. But he will lose ground to Krobach as time runs by, having older tires.
And he's going to have to make a pit stop. Well, no, he already pitted for the last time, but yeah, from this point on, his tires are going to be older. Speaking of someone, though, with the opposite new tires, that's Mike Rasmus. He's about maybe 4 seconds behind Michael Krobach right now in the 68 car. This is what the overcut did, Mike Rasmus, compared to the two other leaders in the championship. You got, of course, Thomas George and Michael Krobach, so those two guys, slightly older tires, but that's just what the undercut does.
Well, and Rasmus had a very bad pit stop, a 16.52, which has lost him a few seconds on the pit lane, and he pitted a couple laps later than Thomas George, but I don't think that's going to be enough of a difference to make up what he's lost in the pit lane. So that's kind of, I don't want to say has taken him out of contention here, but it's certainly put him in a tough spot if this thing goes green at the end.
So up front, 3 drivers still have to pit: Greg O'Berry, Rich Jetty, Guy L. Brooks. They currently run 1, 2, 3. They make up your entire podium. In 4th position, it's Thomas George. 5th is Cody Dempster. 6th place is Michael Krobach, and 7th is Brian Yazik. Most of the guys, the majority of the top 7 includes all 3 of our championship contenders. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th have all pitted before the end of this race, as has the 8th place of Mike Rasmus. So still a lot to play for before the end, but right now, championship and the race still look to be firmly within the grasp of Thomas George.
Yeah, he's done a very good job of just controlling this race, and he is in the perfect spot right now, just kind of running all by himself. And his lap times right now are, last time by, actually much better than Krobach's were, and pretty much even with Cody Dempster behind him. So he just needs to kind of manage his race from here on out, and hope that he might drop off in pace a little bit, but at the gap that he's got right now, I just don't see the competition catching him.
Yeah, I mean, it's about 2 or 3 seconds back to Michael Krobach from Thomas George. So, yeah, 3.2 seconds as it stands currently. So he's going to have to make up a lot of time before the end of this race if he wants any chance of finishing in 2nd position. And even then, I feel like if Thomas George, I mean, he's definitely going to have led the most laps. If he wins the race without Michael Krobach leading a lap himself, they're not even going to tie.
Yeah, and even if if George ends up getting say 2nd, but he gets those other 2 bonus points, he basically Krobach still needs to finish essentially like 4th or so in order to secure the championship that way. So even if George doesn't win this race and gets 2nd instead, it's still going to be pretty tough for Krobach to avoid giving up that points lead, with George getting a guaranteed 4 bonus points. He's got the leading the most laps and the bonus point per for leading 1 lap as well. So that's 4 points he's guaranteed got already without even winning.
Yeah, so that's basically going to take the championship lead down to about 5 points. So Krobach has to stay within about 5 positions of Thomas George. But basically, the 3 guys ahead of Thomas right now, they still haven't made their pit stop. As you can see, Mike Rasmus currently working to the inside of Brian Yazik. He's got quite a bit fresher tires. I think Mike's also been just a tick faster all day, so no surprise here. Brian, of course, had to come down pit road a lot earlier than I'm sure he would have wanted to after he went for a slide, he basically needed to change his front tires almost immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, he could have even come in, more aggressively with it. He could have come in even earlier yet, but it's just a hard call to make. And we saw earlier just in this race that the early pitting strategy really didn't work because of the whole, caution during a pit cycle thing. And that may have actually discouraged a few drivers from trying that out again because of how kind of reckless the apron was for these drivers entering pit road.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at Michael Krobach, his fastest lap time during the race, it's still what, Kenny, like a 27.5 or something? Fastest lap in practice for him was a 27.2. He's been lapping just above the 28, so there's about, a half a second worth of fall off. If Greg O'Berry, if the caution were to fly right now, I can't imagine if you're Thomas George, Michael Krobach, or Brian Yazik, you don't come down pit road with the rest of the guys in the field. Otherwise, I mean, you're basically going to be losing a half a second to them, and at this place, that's huge.
Oh yeah, at this point we've run enough laps after this pit cycle to where definitely everybody else would come down pit road. Now I do think that the leaders, O'Berry, Jetty, and Brooks, I don't see them running very many more laps. However, Brooks pitted on lap 71, still out there on the racetrack. Actually, I think he's still out on the racetrack.
He's probably going to pit in the next couple laps. I think even if basically we'll say they pitted at lap 75, it's 25 to get them to 100. They've got basically 40 more. So about lap 140, I'd expect these guys to come in had they pit on lap 175. So they got to be getting super close on fuel here.
But my point is Brooks being still out there pitting on lap 71, and Jetty has 8 laps more of fuel on board than him. So if Brooks can stretch it here for a while, we know that Jetty and O'Barry can go essentially 8 longer than what Brooks can. So it might be a little while yet before the leaders pit.
Yeah, I wonder, too, if these guys didn't sort of have this strategy. I know O'Barry didn't. Rich Jetty, I mean, he was basically at the back of the pack pretty much all that run there, so I wouldn't be too surprised if maybe he was saving in anticipation of basically running this thing out of fuel and hoping we get a caution right before the very end. Boy, we've seen it more often than not. Cautions breed cautions.
Yeah, for sure, and we got a decent battle going on here for about 8th, 9th, and 10th place between Yazik, Ward, and Harnish. Ward, he's been trying to fly through the field here, kind of recovering some of his track position, and made quick work of Harnish, now pressuring Yazik here. He's got a fast race car. Just Jeff Ward has just never been able to really control the race like what he's probably needed to do.
Yeah, I think Jeff has been one of the fastest cars all day long. He just sort of lacked that immediate control. And it certainly didn't help that he started in the back of the field, basically had to race his way all the way up to the front. And I mean, I feel like the pit cycle strategy, too, currently, I mean, that really did play into his hand. He's still looking down on the inside here at Brian Yazik. Yazik has been fighting tooth and nail for this position.
At the moment, Ward would be the hard charger winner for the driver making up the most positions. Started 22nd up to 8th. So that's 3 points for him. So that's another 3 bonus points that Krobach would not be getting. Also, fastest lap, I believe, is that also a point? If it is,
it is.
That would be given to Eckridge.
Another 1 point. Let me look at the notes just one more time. I wrote them all down. It is.
But regardless, Eckridge would be the winner of that award, whether it's a point or not. Eckridge has the fastest lap. So, and by the way, during this conversation, Greg O'Barry has come down into the pits and relinquished the lead officially to Thomas George. So this pit cycle is officially done and dusted, and we're pretty much set here for the last 20 laps. And Dempster now, though, is only
closer.
Yeah, 3/4 of a second back.
Yeah, he's close, and I mean, he's hunting him right now. I don't know if this is Thomas George kind of saving his tires just in case maybe there's a late charge or something else, or maybe Cody Dempster, and he knows just how to use those tires. We've seen him more often than not. He knows when to charge at the beginning of runs, and he knows, too, kind of when his tires are just maybe a little bit better than his opponents. I mean, he gained 0.2 of a second that last lap. I think he's hunting for this lead.
Yeah, and Krobach ran pretty much an identical lap time to Dempster. He's catching Thomas at about the same rate, and if Thomas loses this lead here just to Dempster, that'll give Krobach the championship. Yeah, so
I mean, that's how tight this thing is.
And I mean, and Dempster's been just hunting checkered flags all season long, so he's not going to lay back. He's going to be going for this. So I mean, this is going to come down to the wire, and it's getting closer more quickly than I thought it would, and I'm wondering if maybe George burned up his stuff a little bit at the beginning of this run.
Yeah, I mean, just in that one turn alone, especially at corner entry, Cody gained a lot of time. He got looser than heck coming off the corner, lost about the 10th he gained, but that last lap, Michael Krobach gained 0.3 of a second. Cody Dempster only gained about maybe a 0.5, but boy, I mean, these guys are just getting closer and closer as time goes on. This last time by, Cody gained up the entirety of the 0.2 he gained the lap before. He's back to 0.7 of a second deficit. Michael Krobach, though, he gained another 1/10 of a second, so Krobach currently continues to be the fastest guy on the track. You can see the difference. Brian's got those pulled up on the screen the last couple laps.
And Thomas has a car up in front of him right now, Grant Brown, and that is not going to help Thomas George's lap times whatsoever. And Thomas really has not had that much traffic to deal with other than the straggler lap cars today, other than the very beginning when he got up to the lead. But this right here is definitely not going to do him any favors. Last time by, he was, just over a tenth slower than both second and third place behind him.
Yeah, Michael Krobach gained about a tenth and a half that last time by. But Kenny, as the laps wind down, we haven't done this in a hot minute. Let's ride on board with what Michael Krobach here as he tries to hunt down Thomas George here for the championship win here. Let's take us for a lap around Phoenix.
All right, so we just crossed the start-finish line. We'll go down into turn 1. It looks like Krobach is going to be running this lower line. Actually, some drivers will downshift down here, some will not. Wrap that bottom lane. Car really, really loose on exit right now as we're into a long run down the backstretch. And look at the shallow entry. Want to see and get to that yellow line immediately. Wrap that yellow line and get on the throttle actually earlier than you might think. But then come down here, you see Krobach starting to use the dog leg here, just throwing everything at it that he can to make up lap time here. And you see Krobach changing up his line, running the middle line this time. You really want to let the car roll, ease back on the throttle, and you see how much he's kind of wiggling the car back and forth. That's just the car squirming under throttle, just trying to fight for every little bit of grip that he can manage here through these corners. You see these drivers really dealing with a loose condition at this point.
Thanks, Kenny, up at the front of the field. It's still Thomas George. He's got a half a second back to Cody Dempster in the Patriot Media Marketing car. And you might be wondering, what in the world is the car ahead of Thomas George doing? That's Cody's teammate, another Patriot Media car. That is the 41 car of Grant Brown. So he still continues to be a thorn, and maybe not the side, but the front end of Thomas George's race right here. I don't know if he's obviously, Kenny, he's trying to make sure he stays, not to 21 laps down. So there could be something to see in there too, but it's also kind of what you expect out of an F1 or an IndyCar team. Teammates helping each other out. We saw it with the Penske cars last year at Atlanta. Kyle Larson was in the lead by a lot till Joey Logano started to slow him down until eventually Ryan Blaney caught up and passed Kyle Larson for the win.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like, if Grant was like on the tail end of the lead lap, or if he was,
he's really fighting for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he was if he had something to fight for, I would kind of understand him being in this position. But being multiple laps down, I don't really care for this kind of philosophy of racing the leader. I would just kind of back out of it and stay out of it here. See in the background there, Greg O'Berry, the orange car, he is flying through the field. As remember, he pitted way later than the rest of the leaders, but he is a lap down here trying to get that lap back. As you see, Dempster chops him off before they go into turn 1. Grant Brown, or O'Berry here will make the pass, and he'll make his way up towards the leader.
He's going to pull away. I mean, it's hard to tell from that camera angle, but as soon as you can see those cars get at less of an oblique angle there, he is really just pulling away, flying up through the field. I do feel like, though, Cody has burned up his stuff. He lost 0.2 of a second the last time by. I think he's going to lose another 0.2 of a second. Michael Krobach is going to gain 0.1 of a second. So he's catching him. I don't think it's fast enough, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think Krobach and George at this point are kind of trading lap times. As you see, O'Berry gets around the leader here, and that'll extend the gap between the leader and Grant Brown. But, Krobach and Thomas are kind of trading lap times at this point, whereas pretty much every lap Dempster has been slower lately than Thomas George. So, yeah, I think I agree with you. But now this is almost going to help Thomas, because it's essentially a roadblock that Krobach's going to have to get by in order to catch George. And now Krobach's in the position where he's probably thinking he has to go up and win this race, not Dempster go up and win this race in order for him to win the championship.
Yeah, if Michael wants to win this race, he's going to have to take matters into his own hands and go out there and do it the hard way. I mean, Thomas George definitely has led the most laps. He's obviously going to get that 1 point for leading a lap. Michael Krobach still has yet to do that. He hasn't led a lap all race long, so he's missing that extra crucial 1 bonus point for just leading a single lap. Thankfully, though, his teammate Scott Eckridge is going to take away some of the bonus points. They don't get awarded to Scott. Instead of being awarded to anyone, they just go away, so no one can get those points. So Scott is trying to help him out, but not enough.
And we are quickly approaching the end of this race. We're down to about 5 laps to go. Dempster really loose off of turn 4. This is possibly an opportunity.
Michael Krobach's going to get down to his inside here, at least really close.
Yeah, he's going to end up running about the same line as him, and Krobach loose off of 2, just trying every last bit to get some grip off of these turns here late in the going.
Yeah, right now, if a caution comes out, that's going to be it. That's going to be the entire race. So it really, I mean, if a caution comes out, the race is going to be over. It's going to finish under yellow. There's no green, white checkers in this league, so the race is done and dusted. It's going to be Thomas George is the champion, unless, knock on wood, not going to commentators curse him, something happens to the leader right here.
Yeah, and I think, Krobach's gotten to the point now where, he's not even beating Thomas George's lap times every single lap anymore, so it's he's used up every last bit that he's had in that car for this last tire run here. And, George has just had the upper hand this entire race of track position. The 72 car starting, only 4 positions back of Thomas George, but George did such a good job of cutting through the field right away, getting that lead so early, and just being able to hold it and force the other drivers to be aggressive and play offense. And Thomas done a good job of just saying, hey, come and catch me.
Well, I mean, he really did a good job not to shoot himself in the foot with some kind of weird pit strategy that we saw Michael Krobach do. Not to say he did that or be harsh on it, but, Michael Krobach came down pit road really trying to undercut the field. The caution came out, pretty much hosed him. He was able to get the lucky dog, but didn't really work out to his advantage. But as it stands right now, Thomas George is going to come through turns 3 and 4. He's going to get the white flag through the air for parting the flagman. That means there's 1 lap to go before the end of this race, before the end of the season, and before the end of this entire calendar year. Thomas George did everything he needed to do, as you mentioned, Kenny. As soon as the green flag dropped, he was super aggressive to grab the lead. From that point on, he really never gave it up through all sorts of pit strategy, through the cautions, and even when he had to go up there and take it back the hard way, he did just that. He's going to come down the backstretch through turns 3 and 4. Thomas George is going to not only win the MC Squared Editing Services Leading the Way 250K here from Phoenix Raceway, he's also going to win the Season 3 championship. Give it up for Thomas George, winning the race and the championship, just like in real life. Every year at the last race, it's taken a win to take home the championship here at Phoenix Raceway. Second place is going to go the way to Thomas George. Cody Dempster getting second place. Michael Krobach is going to come home to round out the podium. We're going to let iRacing timing and scoring do its thing, and we're going to come back after a quick break. We'll be right back. Maybe go to the fridge, get yourself something to drink, and come right back here.
J.R. Shepard dives down to the inside, trying to see if he's able to get a little bit of that tack that Brandon Proudfoot has been getting up at the front of the field 10 laps ago here at Port Royal.
Yeah, definitely not making a huge ground here on Brian. Brian's able to maintain that gap.
It's Big Justin Morton back into second with J.R. Shepard somehow taking over the lead. I have no idea.
These guys, you see Scott kind of using up all that momentum. Got to enter the corner wide. I expected him to kind of cut back low. See lap car down on the inside. George overshoots the corner. Scott puts that car just where he needs to on the middle. It's going to be a drag race through the kink. Thomas George gets loose. Scott Eckridge has the opportunity to come home with a win right now. Side-by-side drag race.
Oh, wow.
Scott Eckridge, 5/1000ths of a second. Welcome back to Phoenix Raceway for the MC Squared Editing Services Leading the Way 250K. We just saw Thomas George take home not only the victory, but the championship victory as well. He'll finish in first position, rounding out the podium. Second place, Cody Dempster in the 24 car. It really looked like he could mount a challenge at the end, but he just burned up his stuff a little bit too hard, a little bit too fast. Michael Krobach came in here as the championship leader by 9 points. He's going to just barely lose out to Thomas George in the championship standings as he rounds out the podium. Mike Rasmus, old Mr. Consistency, comes back and hits his nickname right on the head of the nail. He'll come home in fourth position as Isaiah Dupre set on pole. He'll round out the top 5. Jeff Ward started dead last on the field. He'll come home in the 6th position, followed by Brian Yazik in 7th place. Jordan Harnish's finished in 8th. Chance Manning comes home in 9th. Grego Berry rounds out the top 10. Woody Mahan had a really off-pace day for him. He's going to finish just outside the top 10 in 11th, followed by Gael Brooks. The first car 1 lap down in the 12th position. Django Matthews in the 14 had a really up-and-down day. He had some really difficult times there dealing with the apron of the track. He'll come home in 13th position, followed by Rich Jetty in 14th. John Wilco comes home in 15th, followed by Grant Brown in 16th. Pete Baskins comes home in 17th, followed by Scott Eckridge in 18th. Scott had a dominant car taken out when a competitor went down the track and came up the track right in front of him, pretty much crippled his car for the rest of the day. Adam Jersky, really strong time for him, came down pit road very unexpectedly. He'll finish in 19th. Tim Weinkopf rounds out the top 20. Jonathan Cogswell and Pedro Henrique, both of those drivers failed to even take the green flag. They'll finish 21st and 22nd place, respectively. That'll round out the entire running order. Can't I believe you're standing by now with the first driver on the podium to be interviewed, that being the 72 car of Michael Krobach.
We'll see if we can get him up in here for a second. And we're down here with Michael Krobach, 3rd place here. Michael, you really set it up for a Hollywood ending here on the season. You took the points lead coming into this race, and just seemed like you didn't quite have the track position you needed all day.
Yeah, Kenny. I just battled being stuck in the dirty air, and it just didn't work out. Tried everything, tried to undercut a pit strategy there. Breaking news: I think we might be tied on points. I'm running the points right now, Kenny. So after this interview, you might need to come back to figure out who the champion is. I don't know. It might be tied. So. Yeah, I don't know. We just we were stuck back there in traffic. Got a caution. It didn't work out, and I don't know what to say.
Well, I mean, it seemed like that real kicker was just that unfortunate caution that came out when you were trying that kind of different pit strategy. Were you trying kind of a basically an extra pit stop right there instead of just doing one?
Yes, I was trying to undercut Thomas. I was trying to just go off sequence from him. I just needed to gain some track position and do anything I could to get around him. And I think at the end there, I had my number of when I wanted to pit, and it didn't work out. Thomas came down the same lap. He was 6 seconds ahead. I came up behind him, and we gained time there. We gained about 4 seconds in that pit cycle, and I could just never quite get to him. And so, yeah, damn.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see what you guys could have done if you didn't lose that track position for, and have to basically come back through the field again. But, we were talking up in the booth, like when you made that aggressive early pit stop call that nobody really else thought of, we were kind of thinking like, why doesn't he try to pit about the same time as Thomas? Because he looks like he's probably got even better pace than Thomas. I mean, did you ever think about actually like just mirroring his strategy, or did you think that wouldn't have been the right play?
I mean, I thought about it, a couple times to stay on the same cycle as him, but I think he was just a little bit faster. So I felt I needed to get off sequence, try to jump him, and do anything I could there. But it never worked out. The cards didn't fall in our favor tonight.
Well, we'll wait for official word from you in the text chat to see who officially is the champion. But in the meantime, regardless, first or second has been a good season for you. Who would you like to thank for the run tonight and the rest of the season?
I got to thank all the boys at Loud Pedal Motorsports, Virtual Grip Network for putting on a great broadcast all year. All my sponsors, MC Squared Editing Services, PGRL, Elite Performance Industries, Clipping That Apex, Mahan Speed Laboratories, Thumbs Up Cancer Down, Graphics Esports, Fleximation Systems, Carolina Sim Shop, Sim Racing Apps, HPP Simulation. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but just frustrating night here on the 72 shop, Kenny.
Well, we'll leave you off on that note, Michael. It was a good season regardless. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you all season long, and we'll see you in the next one next season.
All right, thank you, sir.
That was Michael Krobach, our third place finisher tonight, and I believe Austin has caught up with our second place finisher in the race tonight, Cody Dempster.
Yeah, Cody, driver the number 24 car, brings his race car home in the second position. Cody, it looked like you were quite a bit faster there at the end. It just looked like you burned your stuff up a little bit too fast before you could really get close to Thomas.
Yeah, we were. I think we were really good tonight. Had that unfortunate mishap about 30 laps in with old Scott at Gritch, which is really unfortunate. That's 100% on me. But we came back in, got our damage fixed, and I still had some residual right front damage. I think that kind of hurt us on our long run speed, but just had really good raw speed, especially long run speed. I was just pushing it too much, too early, slipped that right rear one too many times, and it was downhill from there.
Do you think, without that extra right front damage just a little bit, you would have been able to go out there and run down Thomas for the race win?
Thomas was really good. He had a really good car. I think personally I just needed to be smarter as a driver and pace myself a little bit more. I was trying to get there, and just if I had paced myself a little bit more, I still probably had enough time to get there. I think I just hurt myself more than anything else.
Certainly, it's always those things you could say, what could I have done better before the end of the race? But still, you got to look at the positives, Cody. You did a fantastic job running the race all day today. Came home in second place. You're really the fastest car at certain points of this thing, so you still have a lot to hold your head high about, especially, to cap off this season, your first year in the PGRL. But, Cody, before I let you go, who do you have to thank for your second place run?
I got to thank all the clowns, Scott, ignore me, I have concussion brain currently. Scott, Michael, all of them guys for putting this on week in and week out, making sure everything runs smoothly. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with them. You guys for broadcasting this thing. Patriot Media Marketing Services. They've been on board with both the actual Super and the virtual car all year. And can't thank Grant Patriot enough for that, and the girlfriend for letting me spend my Tuesday nights doing this.
Certainly always a huge time killer is Sam Racing, especially the real world stuff. Well, Cody, thank you so much for your time. It's been awesome talking to you, watching you run all season long. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you.
That was Cody Dempster. He'll come home in the second position, and now we'll transfer back to the championship winner here, Thomas George. Hopefully for a nice, exciting interview, Thomas. You won the race. You probably, by our math at least, won the championship too.
Oh my God, I think it's confirmed, boys. I'm looking at the point standings as far as I could tell, and I'm trying not to curse, but we freaking did it.
You sure did. Thomas, you controlled the race pretty much all day long. As soon as the green flag dropped, you just went up to the front of the field and led laps, and you didn't stop bleeding. Really close to after halfway, you pretty much led the majority of the laps to guarantee yourself those 3 bonus points for leading the most. This race, I guess, into words from your perspective of just going out there doing every single thing you had to do.
I don't know. I do not like this track, but apparently every track that I hate, I either do well at or win at. So David said that before we got racing tonight, and I just said to myself, you just got to go out and you have to do what you can do, and let stuff play out as it's supposed to. And I knew I got the most lap. When I got the most laps secured, I kind of focused on figuring out what the next strategy was, and I knew when I wanted to pit, and I can't believe it. I was 9 points back. I cannot believe. I cannot believe where it happened.
We just got confirmation from Michael in the chat. You by 2 points. You are the champion for the season. I just real quickly want to touch on, because halfway through the season, to that point it had been Brian Yasek all season long. He finished season 2 super strong, arguably the strongest out of anybody in the entire field. He carried that momentum into this season, and then was still leading halfway through the season. You took over the championship lead, and you started to grow that lead steadily and just continue to march on forward. And then all of a sudden after last week, bam, lead erased, lead in fact flipped, goes now to the way of Michael Krobach. Put that into perspective too, because you had to be sitting there like, man, I've got this championship locked up, and then all of a sudden it's like a light switch flipped, and bam, you're in second place.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'll admit I was a little disheartened because I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I think I've got this thing locked up, and granted, what had happened between me and Brian at Vegas was I still feel bad about it, but then, obviously what happened tonight, I knew I had to focus, really, really intently focus, and I tried something different with the car here that I felt would keep the tires underneath it, and it seemed to work really well, obviously, since I led all the laps, or pretty much all the laps, it seemed like.
That was pretty much MTJ at Charlotte, buddy.
Dang. No stage win for TJG, though.
Not yet, though. Not yet. Maybe next season if Clown HQ gets on that. You should, why don't you get in their ear? You're on it.
I'm on it, but I'm not going to be getting any bonus points for the next 2 seasons now. Now I've got my work cut out for me. But,
let's see if that rule changes, too. But, Thomas, before I let you go, who do you have to thank for not only winning this race, but the championship as well?
Just everybody in the admin group that that puts up with all this, and they do things I feel the right way the league should do it as, and there's no insanity, mostly. You guys for broadcasting the show, you do a great job every week. Everybody that watches my Twitch regularly, Ash, Kevin, Matt, Gael, Steve-O, just everybody that watches in there, I appreciate you doing. You don't have to watch my streams; they're boring, and they still show up, and I appreciate that. And this is 2020 has been a bad year for me. It may be something stupid. J Rock, I forgot him. Sorry, J Rock. I know it's stupid. It's racing, and it shouldn't mean this much, but when you have a really bad year in terms of personal life, this at least makes you feel good for a little bit.
Certainly does. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Celebrate these wins, buddy. Have a good night.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was Thomas George, winner of the race and the season overall. I'd like to thank our main title sponsor, once again, MC Squared Editing Services. Of course, they lead the way in just about everything there is to talk about for helping you, whether it's, a resume, cover letter, grant proposal, an article, even content for your website. MC Squared Editing Services is going to help you stand out from the crowd. For a free quote for all PGRL fans, you can contact Pretty Good Racing League at gmail.com. MC Squared leading the way in editing services. The next PGRL broadcast, that's sometime next year in 2023. We're going to call that to be announced for now, but we're definitely going to come back. The next Virtual Group Network broadcast is going to be this Friday. BRL's Dirt Street Stock Series takes on Fairbury Speedway at 7:10 p.m. Eastern Time. We had a hoot and a holler of fun last week. Did DJ and I call that race? Very much recommend you folks tune in if you got nothing going on a Friday, or even if you do have something on, maybe you just skip it, stay home. People just like going out now, might get COVID. Anyways, Kenny, since embarking on this journey in February, we've come a long way. It's been about, we've had 90 plus drivers. It's been about 40 plus weeks, 36 races, 3 different champions, different people in the booth and the director's seat. Kenny, it's just been a wild ride, man. What are your thoughts on this year as a whole?
Yeah, this is one of those deals where we didn't necessarily know what we were getting ourselves into from a broadcasting standpoint. We didn't really know any of these drivers personally at all coming into this season, but yet we've become, good friends with a decent amount of them. And we've been able to learn the personalities of a lot of these drivers, both on the racetrack and in the interview booth. We've had quite a few different winners, different drivers who've been able to talk to us. And this PGRL has a lot of good camaraderie, and a lot of drivers have different personalities and driving styles, and we've all gotten to know that throughout this season and this year. It's been a fun ride. It's nice to have a break, just like in the real Cup Series season, but it's going to be exciting to come back next year and see what these PGRL drivers have in store for us. The format is quite unique in what they bring to this, but it has an element of realism as well that I enjoy. And the competitiveness has just gotten better and better as the season's gone on. So I've had high expectations for PGRL going forward. This was definitely a successful campaign for them.
I couldn't agree more. It's been so much fun to watch these guys develop over the course of the year. You start to learn the storylines, the different players in the races, and we kind of knew starting out at Daytona, we're going to see this entire thing unfold. And I remember back then, it was just, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. This has been a whole lot of fun, genuinely looking forward to Tuesday nights each and every week, and it's going to be so much fun to hopefully continue that as time goes on and call many more of these seasons for many more years to come. But of course, that's pretty much going to wrap things up for us. This has, again, been a pretty good production of the Virtual Group Network. On behalf of myself, Austin Belke, my booth mate, Kenny Kibbe, our director, Ryan Seneker, and everyone behind the scenes at the Virtual Group Network, thank you so much for watching just today and all season. And for the last time this year, have a good night.